Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rahchamah's Conscious Couch. Today's Interviews will consist of Professor Walter Williams, who wrote the book Historical Origins of Christianity and Islam, as well as Brother Baroon, who is the host of Baroon TV, author of True Master, Self to Self, Aside, and, of course, yours truly, Rahchamah, with some great informational interviews and subject topics for your public and private remedies. We'll return right after a few commercials.
What does Tahaka Secure Party and Creditor package entails? Private consultation by phone and email, the correct system for paying your property taxes in the private, the documents you would need to conduct business and transactions, public and private, Tahaka Library, documents for status change in commerce, master study manuals, and trust guides. Free credit repair with all 3 credit bureaus. A business for you in itself. Educational materials on DVD and CD sent directly to your postal box. 1099's education and how to file. How to become a private banker the right way. Asset building, protection, and investing. We also, for all of our clients, host our private conference calls. To access this kind of education and power, go to www.newdataelimination.com or call me directly, 904-303-9061. Also keep in mind, we have the top, best financial advisors there is. Peace.
Hi, I'm Rahchamah. Need office space, a business phone system, or a business address for your home-based, mobile, online, expanding, or downsizing business? Go to www.businessfront.space. You can reserve fully furnished private office or meeting space by the hour, utilities and Wi-Fi included. Reserve now at www.businessfront.space. Never miss your mail with our informed delivery service. No matter where you are in the world, sign up for a physical address today at www.businessfront.space. Calling all singers, rappers, musicians, and entertainers. Yah Heard Radio has radio promotion for you. Yah Heard? Download our app, Yah Heard Radio. That's YAHHEARD Radio from your Google Play Store today. Yah Heard Radio provides a commercial platform for independent artists. Tune in our live stream at www.yahheardradio.com and join our international listeners for commercial-free clean music in all genres. Have your music played among the best. Build your fan base, receive licensing and royalty opportunities. For promotion or more information, go to our Contact Us page at www.yahheardradio and create your login credentials for access to log in to sign up. For more information, call 904-900-5517. Yah Heard.
Hi, I'm Tahaka Moneo Bay. I'm not a lawyer and don't give out legal advice. But if you are looking for an opportunity to have your very own general post, your very own professional domicile, or if you need legal advice, go to www.newdataelimination.com and look up top to your right. Click on the new custom page button. It's all the way over to the right. And right below the video on that page, you'll see the links for the general post as well as the link for getting legal advice. If you have any further questions, call me to Rahchamah LB 904-303-9061 before 7 p.m. That's 904-303-9061 before 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everything you need is right at www.newdataelimination.com. You're non-resident? Well, if you are, you need your own general post. www.newdataelimination.com.
And now, back to the show with Tarhaka and Moorish Talk Live 100.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to Rahchamah's Conference Couch. Today, special guest will be Dr. Walter Williams, who wrote the book Historical Origins of Christianity. We also have Brother Bareem, the host of Bareem TV, author of True Master, Self-to-Self Asar, and, of course, yours truly, Rahchamah, always bringing you the latest in entertainment, news, current events, and public and private information. We just want to tune in first just to make sure that our guest is on the line. I see Dr. Walter Williams. Hi, how are you today?
Fine, Rahchamah. How are you doing today?
I am doing blessed. I am. Thank you for asking. And it is a pleasure to have you on our show today.
Thanks
I'm sure
for inviting me.
Audience, you're so welcome. It's great to have you here. All of our audience is familiar with your work, your lectures and your teachings as far as your book, Historical Origins of Christianity, and you also wrote one called The Historical Origins of Islam. And your position is that no one by the name of Jesus Christ or Muhammad ever walked the earth, and that it all was a hoax. Today we're not going to deal with the aspects of Islam, but we will deal with your book on Christianity today. So that will be our focus topic today. And I just have a question for you, and it's that age-old question: what came first, the chicken or the egg? And when you wrote this book, what was your background before you wrote this book in order to have you to come out with your perspective on Christianity being a hoax? Did you used to be a Christian and then something happened to you to cause you to study historically to come to these conclusions? Could you elaborate on that for just a moment?
Yes, well, I've never been a Christian by no means or fashion, because my mother and my family in general, they were not churchgoers, were not Bible thumpers or anything like that. They didn't have any pictures of a Jesus, the Christ hanging on the wall. So I missed that as a kid, a child coming up in the world in Chicago, Illinois, where I was born. So I missed all of that. So, no, I was not raised as a Christian or anything like that. But, however, I accidentally stumbled up on the reasons why I wrote the book and the information I have put in the book as to say that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. And then I went on to say the same thing about the Prophet Muhammad. I went on to say the same thing about every biblical character named in the Bible. 99 and 9/10 of every named character in the Bible never walked the earth as human being. But now it took me quite a long time to find that out. But like I said before, I stumbled on the reasons why I'm saying there's no Jesus Christ, that which led me into the reasons why I'm saying there's no other characters named in the Bible walked the earth as human being, no Prophet Muhammad, etc., etc. So it was strictly by accident. I went to Italy. Long story short, I went to Italy and with my wife in 1975, and on the Rome bus, over the intercom system, the guide said when the Romans went to Egypt to receive their civilization, something something went on inside of me, which was light came on inside of me, and I realized that I need to get back to America, get me a magnifying glass and every pictorial book that I can find on ancient Egypt, because in my latter teens, late teens, going into my early 20s, I was a professional musician. I met a man by the name of Sun Ra, who told us, that came around him because he was old enough to be our fathers at that time, that we were descendants of the greatest people that ever walked this earth in human form, known as the ancient Egyptians. So I put that in my subconscious mind until when I was, it's time I went to Italy, and the tour guide made that statement that woke me up to the fact that I need to go back and start my studies in ancient Egypt, so which I did. So in so doing, I was down in a studio, a friend of mine, who he and I went to school together. He's a professional musician even to this day, and he was teaching a saxophone lesson, and he had a shelf full of books over there because he was a book buff. So I went over to his bookcase, and I saw a book called The Outline of History by H.G. Wells, and I picked the book up, and I opened the book. I didn't thumb through it, but I opened it up, and there was a picture that I thought was Jesus Christ, but it was under the caption of this picture that I thought was Jesus Christ was a word or the name Serapis, you see. And then I began to read. He says, in the cult of Serapis, he is spoken of as a Savior. I said, wow, this is the same attributes that they're given to this Jesus the Christ. Then it went on to say, he raises the dead. I said, this is the same attributes that they give to this Jesus Christ. Then it says that even after death, he will always be in the presence of Serapis. And this is the same attributes that they give to this Jesus Christ. So this is how I found out that there's never been a man that walked earth in form of a race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. But I had to convince myself that what I was finding out about no Jesus Christ, it took me on a search of Serapis and other things that is related to religion, et cetera, on an 18-year quest before I came out, because I had to be correct, because I couldn't come out and face the world with things that were not factual. So I had to be correct when I'm saying to the world, hi world, this is Walter Williams, and I'm saying that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. I can't go out there on what I believe. I had to go out there with facts that showed me that there was no Jesus Christ. So that's a little overview in a nutshell. Sister Rahchamah.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Yes, sir. So thank you for that summary. So basically, you're saying it took from you to come outside of the American society to another country in order to learn that there was someone else that had a different name that experienced the same attributes and the same mission that Jesus Christ over here had experienced, but it was the same thing that happened over there. And that is what led you to other research in order to come out with your book and your conclusion. Okay.
No, that's not true. That's not right now.
Okay.
I went over in Italy on a trip because my wife's three sisters worked for the Illinois Bell Telephone Company. The Illinois Bell Telephone Company had a very inexpensive trip going to Italy. So all three of her sisters, plus my wife and I, we hooked on to that trip. So, but while over there, okay, I wasn't looking for this. I had no inkling that this was going on or would be said. I wasn't seeking whether that was a Jesus Christ or not. I had no idea because I wasn't into religion, no kind of way. So by accident or by circumstance, this person, this woman on the intercom system over the Rome touring bus made those statements that when the Romans went to Italy to receive their civilization. So now I had, it took me back to what son-in-law had told me 20-some odd years earlier about the ancient Egyptians, that we were descendants of the ancient Egyptians. That's what I was focusing on. So I said, well, I better get back to America. Just a moment. I said, I better get back to America and get me every pictorial books on that's depicting ancient Egyptians in the book, and get me a magnifying glass and look in the faces of what's being depicted in these books that are depicting ancient Egyptian people. And I wanted to make sure that what I'm looking at in these particular books, that these ancient Egyptians look like me, look like you, and look like us Africans in this country. That's what I was looking for. And I said, in order for me to do that, I had to get every history book that I could find to find my way back to ancient Egypt. So this is how it happened. But when I saw this book on my friend's book case that says the outline of history, that sparked my interest, and I grabbed the book off the shelf, like I mentioned before, opened the book, I didn't thumb through it, and that was this charade. So, I would say by divine providence, that this is something that's supposed to have been exposed to me in my life. And that's been 43 years ago. I've been on this quest for 43 years, see? So go ahead. I'm going to turn it back to you, Sister.
Okay, well, great. Thank you for clarifying that. So there happens to be someone, which is a special guest, and anyone who would like to speak to the host or would like to ask a question or make a comment, you need to press the number 1 on your phone, and that will put you in queue in order to raise your hand so that I know you're there, so that you can tune in. And I see that Brother Barine is on the line. Could you dial number 1 so that you can tune in so that I could punch you in on the show, please? Great, thank you. Okay. All right, well, everyone, I'm going to introduce to you Brother Barine. How are you doing today, sir?
Grace and peace. How's everything?
Awesome. You're live on the show. It's great to have you. Brother Barine has the television, the YouTube show, Barine TV, and you also hold classes called Sunday Seminaries, from my understanding. And you have also followed the theology and the teachings and read the book of Dr. Walter Williams. Am I correct?
Yes. I've been
Okay,
I was introduced to the works of Dr. Williams, I believe, in 1999, late 1999, early 2000, back in Brooklyn A&B bookstore. That they were popular on. They sold everything: Dr. Ben, Sheikh Auntie Diop, Ivan Van Sertima, Charles Finch, everybody. And someone introduced me. They said, "Well, do you know the works of Professor Williams?" And I got to say that it was definitely interesting reading his works. And I hear a lot of people on the internet talking right now. We have other people like Ray Hagan, ex-pastor Tamel. I hear Young Pharaoh. I hear Seti. But I have to say that Walter Williams was the first one that set forth certain ideas that I've read in his book that I hear that's prevalent on social media right now. And he's who I consider the father of those thoughts. Even though they may not give him credit for it, I hear a lot of them saying certain things, and I look and I smile because I remember back in '99 in the bookstore first picking his work up, and they may not give credit to him, but I know it comes from him, so I consider him the father of this specific thought, dealing with Serapis. Not the Jesus mythicist thing, because that already existed, but the dealing with the Serapis and attempting to make that connection. And it's an honor speaking, being able to speak to him, Hotep, to Dr. Williams.
And may I Hotep to you, my brother, and it's an honor for you to be on with us this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So I'm glad that we have you two introduce to our audience as well. During the readings of the work of Dr. Williams' work, you have come to the conclusion, from my understanding, that there are some historical narratives as far as the timelines that are concerned that you have questions on that you would like to clarify with Dr. Williams, as far as, for example, the history of various councils and other issues as far as the issues on Judaism being the AD versus the BC religion. And there were some 3 questions that you also wanted to pose. After looking at your one of your videos that you posted online in reference to responding to the work of Walter Williams in reference to some of these, could you elaborate what your position is in reference to the history and origin of Christianity written by Walter Williams and some of the work that he's posted online that you just mentioned that you want to clarify or give your perspective on?
Yeah, I think it's second. Well, that's a little different. I can push that back, but that's dealing with Second Temple Judaism, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and who Moses Maimonides was. But the first question is It has to do with, I've seen 2 lectures where Professor Williams was speaking, and he said that the Egyptians had no army, and he said that the Egyptians had no prison, as far as penitentiary. Now, I'm not sure about the penitentiary thing, but when we go back in history, historians tell us and how people gather information. I'm very interested on how he gathers information, what type of primary source research that he did dealing with Nicaea and everything. But the first question I have for Dr. Williams is the situation with the Egyptians not having an army. We know they were the first world superpower. I don't believe you can be a superpower and not have an army. And historically, we have what's known as the Narmer Pellet, and that is in Cairo. It's in a museum in Cairo, and it showed the joining of Upper and Lower Egypt under King Narmer. A lot of people, a lot of Egyptologists, not everybody, but a lot of Egyptologists believes that was one of the first battles. And what do we do with the Battle of Medigo in the 1400s, which was the first historical war that the Egyptians went through? I just can't see how he can say that's something outside of Ben and Diop and Finch and William Leo Hansberry. So many people attested to the fact that the Egyptian had armies. How can we explain those things in light of the primary sources? What's in the museum in Cairo at Narmer Pellet? How can we say that the Egyptians had no army?
But I want you to give me all your questions one at a time, because if you run them together like that, I'll forget them. So if you
all right. The first one is the Egyptians with the army.
Okay.
You don't believe the Egyptians ever went to war?
I got that. I got what you're saying.
Uh-huh.
If you go to any museum anywhere on Earth, around the world, you will never ever, and that's displaying ancient Egyptian art and artifacts. You will never ever find war weapons in that display. That's a fact.
Okay.
Number 2, the ancient Egyptians did not have a corrupt government. Only people having a corrupt government have jails, because if the government is corrupt, the citizens are going to be corrupt. So you're going to have corruption in that culture. You see, so you jail people like they have over in this country, and as they're doing today all over the world, because the government of that system, let's say America, is corrupt. So you have jails for that. Number 3, you got to remember that our ancient Egyptian ancestors, those Africans who brought forth civilization for all of humanity, were not rulers. They were civilizers. They didn't rule anything. You see, they had no rulers of ancient Egypt. They had governors of ancient Egypt, you see, who ran the government. And they respected and protected all the citizens of ancient Egypt, citizens or the people living under their domain. So therefore, you have to look at our ancestors not as rulers, but as civilized. They were the first civilized people on planet Earth. Why? Because they created an alphabet to make themselves civilized. They were the only literate people on planet Earth. Why? Because they had this creation of this alphabet. An alphabet gives you literacy to the point where you can read, write, and spell. They were the first people today, as I speak, and as we speak, were the first and oldest civilized people on planet Earth. So you can't be a highly civilized spiritual person and go around and conquer other people's countries and diminish them and cut their culture off, rape their women, and plunder their land and their natural resources. Our ancestors had no evidence of that. Okay, they didn't do that. That's not in our spirituality. In our ancestors.
How did they protect the borders? Did anyone ever attempt to invade Egypt, such as the Persians between 400 and 500?
No. I'm going to get to that. Let me.
Okay.
Did you understand what I said about war weapons? There's no evidence.
Yes, sir.
go to any museum, you won't find no war weapons, okay, or where they had any jails. So now you got to go back to what I'm saying, that they were highly civilized people, okay, and they coexist with all other races of people, okay, and they went and traveled around the world, meeting other races of people who had living in the land area, created their culture and so forth and so on. But they went in and enhanced their culture. They didn't go in to destroy their culture. Okay? Now, my book, we're going to get into this. My book that my wife and I are writing at this very moment is called Dispelling Myths of Ancient Egypt.
Okay.
The first chapter in that book is called The Repudiation of the Hyksos. The second chapter, now listen to this. This is getting to your answer of the question that you asked me, and this is the answer. The second chapter is, I have a warning to all African scholars, teachers, intellectuals, and students. Do not use the chronology or the chronologies of ancient Egypt. Why? Because the ancient Egyptians did not write a chronology of themselves. They left us, descendants, us Africans, descendants, living in the United States of America. They left us an immortal legacy in stone, such as the Great Pyramid. The Sphinx, the body of the Sphinx is 6 stories high. The body of the Sphinx is one city block, 6 stories high, with an African face carved in stone. They left us art. They left us literature. That's what they left. They didn't write a history for themselves. Now, the chronologies is out here now. You're talking about the first Pharaoh, the second Pharaoh, this dynasty and that dynasty, okay, and so forth and so on. That was, and you're talking about normal Menez, you see. Now, I'm presenting in my book 5 different chronologies of ancient Egypt. The first one comes out in my book. The first chronology are taken from a book to show the reader what has happened to these chronologies and who created them. The chronologies that you're talking about was normal, and these different fightings and Shabaka and Pianki and all this kind of confusion in there was written and created by Western academia, not our ancestors. They didn't write no history of themselves. If so, I have in my book, produce one. Now, produce a chronology that they've written with all these things that is out here today in other chronologies. See, so they didn't have all the chronologies. Now, and my first chronology I'm presenting is from 1868, a book that one of my friends who has a rare book collection loaned me. And I went into this book, and I found this chronology, okay? I wasn't looking for it, but I found it. It was there right in my face. And they said that the first king in this chronology was Mesram. In parentheses, they put Menez. And they said that the first dynasty was 2188 B.C., Now, remind you, BC dates, you count down, and today's dates that we live in, you count up. Okay? So you have to understand that. So now they say the first king in this chronology was Mesram. Now, who is Mesram? Mesram is the son of Ham. Ham is the son of Noah. Noah had 3 sons in the Bible, only in the Bible now, not in human form. Okay, that Ham had 2 other brothers, Shem and Japheth, and with Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, they make up what is known in the Bible as the family and table of nations. All that's based on mythology. None of these names, characters in the Bible ever walked the earth as human beings. You see, so now they're telling you that this Mesram As you go and read and study a little further about this Mizraim, they said that his name was changed to Egypt. So Mizraim's name was changed to Egypt. So Mizraim and Egypt is synonymous by way of the Bible or the biblical literature. You see? So they'll tell you that this Mizraim, in parenthesis, Menes, started the first dynasty, and it was the first king of Egypt in 2188 BC. Okay? And then you read everything in this particular chronology until you get to the next dynasty. But before you get to the next dynasty, they'll tell you where you can find in the Bible what you just read. Then it goes to the next dynasty, and it says, you tell you about that, blah, 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 blah. And then after you get through reading that, they'll tell you where you can find what you just got to read in the Bible. So when you examine everything, when you study ancient Egypt, and you realize where that they didn't, our ancestors, ancient Egyptians, did not write a history of themselves, okay? They left us an immortal legacy in stone monuments, in literature and art, and so forth and so on. And then the next chronology of Egypt I presented in my new book coming out was from a book by James Henry Breasted, who is known as the father of archaeology of America. He was at the University of Chicago. He put out in his book A History of Egypt. A chronology is in there. And that book came out in 1905. And in his chronology, he listed Menes. He dropped that Mizraim and came out with Menes, M-E-N-E-S, the first king of Egypt. And he listed his dynasty at 3400 BC. You see? Now, mind you, the first chronology come out of this older book was 2188. BC dates you count down. You see? So here come James Henry Breasted saying the first dynasty of Egypt was 3400. Okay? That's a 1212-year difference between the first chronology that I spoke about and the chronology that I'm speaking about coming out of James Henry Breasted's book. Now, let's go to the third chronology I put in my book. It came from a book by the name of, written by Henry Frankfurt from the University of Chicago. Okay? And this book he put out called King, Ship, and the Gods. And in this book, he got a chronology also of ancient Egypt. He lists the first king of Egypt as being Narmer. That is where you get that Narmer. Menes. But he listed his kingship started at 3100 BC. You see all these different dates that they're coming up from Western academia about ancient Egypt. Also in his book, he created a parallel chronology based off of Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia can only be found in the Bible. Okay? Mesopotamia, they tell you, is where Iraq is today, between the two rivers and et cetera, et cetera. See? So, long story short, you cannot use the chronology like I put in my new book coming out, warning to all African scholars, teachers, intellectuals, and students: do not use the chronology of ancient Egypt, because the ancient Egyptians did not write a history or a chronology of themselves. They left us an immortal legacy in stone, art, monuments, and literature. That's what they did. So don't use that. I'm telling you now. I'm suggesting don't use that. But I can't tell you what to use, and I can't tell you what not to use. The only thing I can do is bring some things that I consider to be facts before our African community in America and throughout the world. That's all I can do.
Yes, I understand. All right, so the Battle of Megiddo, So we have no history. We have no history that Egypt went to war. Let's say they're not in the Levant taking other lands, people coming against them. The Egyptians had no army, no navy. I'm wondering who else can I look to? That's an historian that has done primary research to tell me that information, because that's unique right there. That the Egyptians had an army. That's unique right there. Who else?
Okay, that's on your own. I can't tell you who to look and find out this information. I can only I can only report to our African community my research. And if you want to accept it, fine, it's okay. If you don't want to reject it, that's okay too. No problem.
Okay, that's good. I respect that. Let me ask you a question. So what primary research did you do, let's say, dealing with, I don't even want to deal with Serapis yet, let's say dealing with the Nicene Council in Arius and the donation of Constantine. What primary research have you done on that?
Well,
primary sources.
Well, here's what you have to do, my brother. You have to, when you study human history, I'm dealing with human history. Not biblical history or false and fictitious sort of picture history. I'm dealing with human history. When you deal with human history, you got to start with the world's first and oldest civilized people. That's what I did 43 years ago. I set out. I didn't want to know anything, but tell me one thing: where and who was the world's first and oldest civilized people on earth? Where did they live? And tell me the names so I can go out and do some research on them, okay? So anyway, that's what you have to do. You have to start with the world's first and oldest civilized people on planet Earth, see? So now it's up to you to consider whether the ancient Egyptians, our ancestors, were the world's first and oldest civilized people on planet Earth or not. I mean, I can't tell you. I can only say, yes, they are. But if you said, no, there wasn't, then I'll ask you, who is the oldest. But anyway, that's where you start. When you start there, you'll know that when the Greeks came into Egypt in 332 B.C., you realize that our ancestors, ancient Egyptians, had their civilization up and running for 9,668 years before the Greeks ever walked into Egypt. Okay? So therefore, you start from finding out about some history of our ancestors, and you being the oldest and civilized people on the planet. Then you follow the Greeks and the Romans. The Greeks, under the Ptolemies, occupied ancient Egypt for 302 years until the Romans came in 30 B.C. Okay, and then you trace that all of the way up into the time of the Nicene Council, 325. But before you get there, you got to find out and study Serapis. Who is the Savior? That's where you got to study. Who is the Savior that they're talking about? Who is Serapis?
Now, Dr. Williams, I want to cut you off with Dr. Williams because I have a question before we move into the subject topic about the Savior. And it kind of capitalizes on Brother.
No. Wait, my sister. Let me finish up the brother first, and then you come in. See, you can't. Wait. Just a moment. If you come in now with a question, just a moment. I'm trying to clear things.
Actually, Dr. Williams, is to refocus the question. Actually, it's not a separate question from what he asked, but we're getting away from the question that he asked, and this was about the army.
No, we're not getting away from the question. If I was getting away from the question that he asked, he would have told me. So, well, Dr. Williams, you're getting away from the question. I didn't ask you that. Okay? So
I'm asking you this because this is the question. You just made a statement saying that the Egyptians had no armies, they had no weapons. But then you just made a statement saying that the Greeks came in and occupied Egypt. So my question is, if that's the case and they were civilization that did not need any protection or to protect themselves, then and being as great as they were, how was it that the Greeks were able to come in and occupy Egypt if they just willingly just let them come in and just take over?
Dr. Williams is the only person that I'm sorry, Dr. Williams is the only person that I've ever heard that. Like I said, Diop, Chancellor Williams, Finch, nobody, Snowden, Henry Louis Gates, and I've never heard anybody say that the Egyptians don't have any army. And that battle of Megiddo, that's important. Or a whole bunch of battles. If you just do any type of Google search, you don't even have to go to the library. That's how come I'm asking about primary research. What primary? Maybe Dr. Williams can explain to us the difference between a primary and a secondary source. Primary research. What primary research?
Do that before I was interrupted. I told the sister not to interrupt. Wait till her turn comes. Because I was trying to clear up some things for you, the question that you asked me.
Yes.
See, I can't be ejected around from you, from her, and from you, and all that. We end up at the end of this broadcast being confused. Okay, we haven't accomplished anything. Okay. So I was
just confused, Dr. Williams, because you started talking about the Savior and we was on Egypt. But go ahead.
Hold it, young lady. Listen. Ask your questions when when your opportunity comes to you to do that. It's me and the brother. You asked me to come on as a guest. You asked the brother to come on as a guest. You have to respect that. I've said, don't ask me anything while I'm explaining and answering a question for the brother. And I don't want the brother to ask me anything while I'm explaining the question that you may have asked me.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay, and
we have to have some order. See, we have no order now. And I can't be bothered with anything that's out of order.
I respect that.
If you want me to continue on.
What we're going to do is what we're going to do then, because I have to be respectful, and each of you have to be respectful of my time as well. And I have other guests that I have on the show and commentary and commercials I have to do, so I'm going to have to put a time limit on the response so that all of the information can get in and doesn't prolong over on anyone else's time. So I'm going to take about 5 minutes.
Let me say it. My brother. What was your name again?
Berean.
Berean?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Listen, it's been so nice talking to you. I'm going to have to leave, okay? If you want to talk to me any further, you can email me. Are you ready to write?
Yes, I have a pen. Yes, sir.
Okay. Email me at ancientegyptian@msn.com.
msn.com.
Yeah, ANCIENT, Egyptian, EGYPTIAN, @msn.com, and put your phone number there, and I'll get back to you, and we can converse privately, okay?
Yes, sir, no problem.
I'll run the whole thing down to you. I run my research, some of my most important research down to you, and try and answer the questions that you have so you can clear up things in your thinking, hopefully.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes,
so
sir.
do that, okay? And listen, my brother, I want you to, and sister, thanks for inviting me on, and I'll see you all on the next time, maybe. Okay? I'm going to sign off. Me'at Hotep.
Hotep, sir. Okay.
And thank you for coming on the show as well. I wanted to make sure that we just stayed on topic, because it was just going to so many different topics, and I got to get ready to go on to a commercial break as well in a few minutes. But before we do that, even being respectful of your time, because I know that you only had a limited amount of time to be with us today as well. Could you?
I was willing to stay on so he can answer those questions. I was willing to stay on. I told them I was going to be a little late dealing with the classes and stuff like that, because I believe this topic is important here. But he promoted his book or whatever, but he didn't really get into certain things. I never heard of anyone that said the Egyptians didn't have an army. It's just a lot of strange things that I'm hearing. I really wanted to hear him out on those things. Would you like me to hold on, though?
Yes, you can. If you still have enough time to be with us, please do so, because it was already at least at 3:49 Eastern time, and I know that you had to go at 3:30. So I wanted to make sure that you got your questions in, and I apologize that I should have, at the beginning of the show, I should have been more precise as far as putting a time limit on answering the questions, so that we would have been able to diverse back and forth, so it wasn't so elongated. But I did want for you to get your perspective out because I'm sure that everyone on the platform is very familiar with Dr. Williams' work. And I know that there was some interesting videos that you had on YouTube, one of them being The Madness of Walter Williams in reference to the historical narrative and timelines that you said that were not correct in the history of the Council of Nicaea. Which is some things that if he was still on the show, we will give him an opportunity to explain as well. But could you tell us a little bit about why you posted the video about the madness of Walter Williams?
One of the reasons, like I said, one of the reasons is he had his timelines a little confused. In one video, he says that Moses Maimonides invented what we call the Pentateuch. That's the first 5 books that Jews and Christians normally attribute to the prophet Moses or the lawgiver Moses. And the problem we have with that is the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have the book of Genesis from the 1st century. How can Moses, Egyptian, a Spanish European Jew from the 14th century, how can he have written something and backtrack it? How can it be discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls? That's real problematic. We have thousands of people that are studying Second Temple Judaism. And that's a problem if you're saying Second Temple Judaism didn't exist and Judaism came on the scene before Christianity. That's all madness. I can't say that Carly B invented rap music. I can say it if I want to. But once I find Salt and Pepper, once I find Heavy D, once I find out that it's Run DMC, it's other people, I have to change the narrative. I can say anything. That's how come I'm saying primary sources are important. And I'm not sure if, I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm not sure if Professor Williams knows the difference between a primary and a secondary source. If I'm saying the Egyptians claimed that they went to war, this before the white man come on the scene. If I explain that the Egyptians went to war and I'm giving you primary sources on that, we have a serious problem. He mentioned something else in his video about the donation of Constantine and some Egyptian priest, and nobody historically understands that. Everybody knows that the donation of Constantine is a fraudulent document that the Catholic Church invented in 1778. And Constantine was supposed to have leprosy, and I wish the listeners would Google this, the donation of Constantine. He has this in his book, and he have a twisted story about it, but in all actuality, if you go Google the donation of Constantine and you look at it, Constantine was supposed to have had leprosy, and he went to Pope Sylvester, and when he got to the Pope told him to go and get baptized, and when he got baptized, he was cured of his leprosy, and he wrote a document, and he turned everything over to the Pope. That was something that the Catholic Church was using when they were terrorizing everybody in Europe, and it came hundreds of years after Constantine. If you read greatest Christian, greatest church hoax, there's a few books out there, but greatest church hoax, it's all in there. Everybody know that the donation of Constantine is a fraudulent document. Just like the Hadrian letter when we start dealing with Serapis. Everybody know that everybody in scholarship knows that. That's how come I'm asking him, can you give me some professors, people that hold degrees and teach in universities that believe what you're saying? He can't do it. He can't give us any research on that, and people would sit down. It hurt me when I seen him in lectures, and he's talking, and he's telling people the Egyptians have no army, and everybody's saying that's right. It's impossible. That's going against everything that every scholar has said. And I can't accept that, and I can't sit in that audience, but at the same time, because he's an older gentleman, he's done his research, everybody claim that he got to be right with that, or nobody want to challenge him, nobody want to question him on that. We have to start digging and dealing with primary research, and I find out in the conscious community, I asked them, when y'all start dealing with Nicene Council, what are the primary sources that you used? If you don't say Eusebius, if you don't say Athanasius, if you don't say Arius, if you don't say those primary sources from the people that were there, they're saying something totally different from what he's saying. And a lot of people in the conscious community are repeating what he said. I hear from Irritated Genie, I hear from Ray Hagan, I hear from Salva Seti, but they don't know primary sources. If you've never read the writings of Athanasius, you can't tell me about the Nicene Council. You can't do it. We got to go to primary. Anytime there's two secondary sources that contradict each other, Dr. Ben and let's say Ivan Van Sertima or anybody else, you go back to the primary and you judge it for yourself. And a lot of people don't know how to do primary source research, and I'm seeing a lot of that with Professor Williams because he's making things up.
So basically, you're saying that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you're saying that when it comes to primary and secondary would be the commentary, for example, of some of the people that he's read, like the gentleman from 1905 that did a commentary on research that he did. That would be considered secondary.
That's secondary. That's correct. And sometimes we can find primary source in secondary source. If Alex Haley wrote something about Dr. Martin Luther King and he interviews Coretta Scott King, that would be a primary in a secondary because they're interviewing his wife that was there. I don't want to hear from somebody in the conscious community about the death of Malcolm X. I'd rather hear it from his wife who was there when he was shot. She's primary, they're secondary. But sometimes you can interview somebody that was there. You would be a secondary source, but you have primary within that. And I noticed that a lot of people in the conscious community, they're real confused with it, so they're just going with certain things. Oh, well, you got to understand Arius was part of the Coptic church, and he didn't believe that Jesus had a body. That's not true. If you look at the primary sources, Arius believed the same thing that everybody else believed, but Arius just believed one day God in heaven made Jesus and that Jesus made the world. Everybody in the room believed that Jesus created the world. That's the problem. They're trying to make it sound like Arius was saying something else, and I challenge anybody on that. Shetty, I challenge anybody, Ray Hagan, anybody dealing with primary sources on that. They could call in right now. I got them right before me right now. But people are not going to do that. They're going to rather go and listen, I hate the white man. I'm not dealing with the white man. The white man is a liar. But we still got to go to primary sources to prove that the white man is a liar. This is where the problem comes in. Y'all can't go with blind faith. And a lot of people talk about, you Christians in the church have blind faith, but they're dealing with blind faith. If you believe the Egyptians had no army, you're dealing with blind faith and you're going against facts. The same thing that they tell the Christians. You're going against facts. And y'all are listening to him preach to y'all, and they're accepting that. Not you, but I'm saying people are accepting Walter Williams, and he's saying something that nobody else said. I don't even go with all of Ben and Massey and Sheikh Ansi Diop. I don't go with all of them. Charles Finch, I don't go with all of what they say, but you definitely can't just make a bold statement and have no facts to it, and everybody just riding with that. We can't do it, and there's too much of that in the conscious community.
And of course, he was saying some very well, and of course, he was saying some very good and important things, even segueing into his second book that he was promoting that's getting ready to come out, that it seems to be a sequel to the history, origin of Christianity that he wrote to explain a little bit more about some of his research and where he got some of his sources from, which were information from other literature that he wrote. But with that being said, it kind of confused me because then we were starting to talk about so many other different people came into the play, like the Greeks, and then we started getting into the Savior part, which is a good subject topic because the whole book is saying that that there has never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. And he says that it is a hoax. And on his book, he has a picture of Osiris, which is an ancient Egyptian god. So I see where the fundamentals of his book comes from Egyptology or Egyptian background, and then has the picture of, the Jesus Christ, the Caucasian Jesus that has been circulated around by the Roman Catholic Church. What would be your position on, after reading his book, what would be your position on the statement that he made that no one by the name of Jesus Christ ever walked, in retrospect to his claim about Osiris, Serapis, Jesus Christ?
He have to separate. When you're dealing with, I said that I've come prepared to ask him certain things. What is the historical method? How do historians gather what they gather? Walter Williams, and I challenge him, name 10 professors that teach in a university on the face of the earth that'll tell you Jesus never existed. If you go with the historical method and you just go based on what regular historians deal with, don't make Jesus special. The same way we would gather information on Socrates, Plato, Alexander the Great, or anybody else in history, the same way with those same standards we judge Jesus, it's no problem. I only know, like I've said in other videos, I only know two people that have degrees in the field that say that Jesus never existed, and that's Richard Carrier and Richard M. Price. There's nobody in no university that I know here, Yale, Harvard, Oxford, anywhere that teaches that. Even atheists, Bart Ehrman, Francesca, I can give you 25 atheists that are scholars in the field, and they'll tell you Jesus existed. The problem people have is people mix up virgin birth and walking on water. In the first century in Galilee, there was a man named Yeshua that was a peasant teacher that was crucified. That is established. I challenge anybody on that. And when people start quoting people, I don't want to hear from Omar Johnson. I want to hear from people that have degrees in the field, that make a living, that does this right here. Even if they're atheists, they'll tell you, no, he existed. Now, did people later on add to the story? That's a different subject. But if you deal with the historical method, nobody that knows what they're talking about outside, like I said, Richard Carrier and a few outside of them, there's too many people with degrees in the field that they'll witness that he existed. If we're dealing with the historical method, but like I said, a lot of people, I don't want to deal with talking snakes, and that has nothing to do with searching out the man Christ Jesus, the man that they called Jesus that people later on said was the Christ. That has nothing to do with that, and we've got to separate the two. That's how come I say a lot of people, in the church definitely, in the conscious community, they don't know how to gather information and how to do research. They'll say ignorant stuff. People are hitting me, show me the bodies. Show me the bodies. That's one. And what's so crazy is when you start dealing with like the Four Horsemen, and you start dealing with Christopher Hitchens and all of these other guys that are atheists that have degrees in their specific field, Sam Harris, they never say dumb stuff like that. They'll never use the Hadrian letter, the bishops of Serapis. They don't use that. Richard Carrier don't like Christians. He don't like the Bible, but he'll never use that because he knows historians don't use that because that's fraudulent documents. And it seems like Walter Williams set up a book based on fraudulent documents. The donation of Constantine and this mess that he's talking about, that Hadrian letter, that came 140 years after the fact. That's not a primary source. That's shaky, and everybody in the field know that it's shaky. But apparently Walter Williams don't know that. That's like, I seriously have a problem with primary and secondary, and he built a work off of secondary. I can't even say secondary sources because a lot of what he's saying is a no source. If you look at the Arian controversy, that has nothing to do with Arius being black, and he knew that Jesus never existed. And I see this in Hidden Colors also, but nobody's quoting primary sources. Nobody's going back. And when I asked them, who was Eusebius? How can you not know who Eusebius is if you wrote a whole book on Nicaea? How can you not know who Socrates is? It doesn't make any sense. Athanasius, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. But yet people are promoting this and nobody's challenging it because, once again, there's a lot of people that's not trained in this. And if they're not trained in this, they're listening to other people like a Chariot S. They're looking at the movies with Geist and Heru's story, Heru is Jesus and all of that stuff, and it's not true. Nobody, no primary sources on Heru was born of a virgin, had 12 disciples, walked on water, was crucified. The Egyptians didn't even crucify. The Persians did that later on, and the Romans mastered it. So they had things all mixed up. That's what we call anachronisms. They had things all mixed up just to promote a certain thing, that the white man is the devil. If you don't want Jesus and you don't want the Bible, I don't have no problem with that. But let's deal with primary sources. Let's deal with the truth of the matter. Let's deal with what the ancients left us, and not make things up just to make black people feel good. I know that may sound like
rough, but what it is. Now, here's my question based on the position of the book, and as you see, I interrupt, but respectfully, so that we don't, go off to another topic before we, finish on the first one. So within his book, saying that it all was a hoax, Jesus Christ was a hoax. So you're saying, are you going off of just your feelings or your beliefs? That he is saying that it's a hoax? Is it coming from out of a personal, intimate place, or is it coming from off of a primary source of information that you have that would disprove him with facts actually yourself?
When I talk to people and when I talk to people and I ask them, I said, because he holds the position of a mythicist, and there's other people that out here that hold the position of a mythicist. When I ask them that, I say, well, who was the first mythicist in the history of the church? Who in the history from the time of Alexander, well, not from the time of Alexander with Serapis, if you come down to the first century when the Jesus movement started, what they call the Way, when that started, from that point on, who was the first person that we see in the history of the planet that started saying Jesus never existed? Who was the first person? And these are questions that I have for him. Most people can't tell me. They go to a chariot ass. They go to the movies of Geist. Well, Jesus was the white man used that. The slave ship named Jesus. A lot of people don't know it was Count Vonley, and the guy that wrote the work Ruins of the Empire. For 1,800 years, nobody said Jesus didn't exist till these white folks started saying that in France. That's when the movement started. Now, everybody go do your homework on that. A lot of folks, while I'm talking, I wish folks would go Google and go do their homework on that. Find somebody else. That's how come later on H.G. Wells can say that, because he got it from Vonley. And he was the one promoting that. He came over here, and he was rocking with Benjamin Franklin, and all them people were over here, and they were deists. They were starting a movement. They were doing it for a specific reason. That's when Napoleon was running amok in Egypt, and they were raping Egypt, and they wanted to promote this deist thing, and they were Freemasons and doing their thing. This is for a specific reason, so they brought that out there, and they started teaching the Christ consciousness. That's something totally different. But now, for 1,800 years, it's so strange that nobody ever said that.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Now, we know that there are literatures, and I'm sure you're aware of the Apocrypha, and in it speaks, it has several books that were canonized by the Catholic Church. And we know for a fact that there are two things that are in existence, that is the Torah, the Old Testament, which is the beginning and the end, and it does not speak of the name Jesus Christ in that book, as not even during the birth. Then we have the King James Version, which 1611 edition, which was had the Apocrypha in it before it was canonized. It also does not speak of or have the name Jesus Christ in it. So, playing devil's advocate, do you think that comes from a place then to substantiate the fact that there never was a man that never walked the earth on any form, race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ until the Christian religion was hijacked by the Romans, or the Greeks or the Romans, and at the Council of Nicaea against coming together with the monotheism and the polytheism to create something that they both could agree on to stop the madness during that period of time, is where this derived from, and maybe from that place he's able to say, okay, it all was a hoax. This man never existed in that form. And my part two to that question is, if that is the case, and in which we do have documents to support that, could the rest of the information that he's saying in his book come from a place of the fact that there's other places on the earth that he went to that has the same story timeline as so-called Jesus Christ, doing the same exact things throughout a period of time that makes him come to the conclusion to derive that it was a hoax? Should that mean that, and that's my first question, then I want to go to another question about the existence of, about the Egypt question and about they never exist, the Israelites never existed.
If you deal with the J, the Apostle Paul didn't call them Jesus. First of all, they were Aramaic, Hebrew-speaking people, and the New Testament was written in Greek. We have no problem with that. Later on, so if he's arguing that the person that name Jesus didn't exist, absolutely so. We have no problem with that right there. But Yeshua, we're talking about a peasant servant, that was an Israelite, that was a rabbi, that was a teacher, that was crucified. That's where the confusion comes in. They're trying to say that, and historically everybody rides with Jesus existing. That's the problem there. What was the second part of the question that you wanted to deal with?
Okay, so you agree with him that the whole thing about Jesus Christ is a hoax, as far as that name and utilizing that name, and no one never walked the earth. You agree with that? But the story of something happening to someone that came during a period of time under a different name, that person did exist, is what you're saying.
That's correct. And when you start saying certain, a lot of people running around here with no primary source, and Mithra was born of a virgin, Haru was born of a virgin, Krishna was born of a virgin, had 12 disciples, and that's another thing. When we start dealing with Count Vali and ruins of an empire, he had another friend, and he was the one that was Charles. His name was Charles, and he was the one that started propagating all of these sun gods. But we have no evidence of that. When we start dealing with Mithra, he was born from a rock and he came out as a grown man. But on the internet, this stuff flies. Nobody's teaching this in universities. Nobody with degrees are bringing this stuff up. Even when we start dealing with those virgin birth stories, that come from a white man, Percy Graves, back in the days. And if you get on the secular web right now and pull up Richard Carrier has a PhD in world history. He's an atheist. He hates Christians. He hates the Bible. If you pull him up, on the secular web, they can Google this right now as I'm talking, he'll tell them don't use 16 crucified saviors against Christians. It's unreliable. Because Percy Graves was just talking. He was just running his mouth, Haru this and Mithra that and Krishna this and all of that stuff, and it's not right and exact. And people that are trained in the field, they don't use it. But this thing, it took off because basically I like to say that ignorance on social media gives ignorance a platform. So there's a platform for this stuff to spread. This is why I'm saying you just can't accept Walter Williams and what he's saying. It's only jumping on social media. Nobody's saying some of the things that he's saying at all. If you're a Muslim, if you're an atheist, if you're a Christian, if you're a scholar, you're not dealing with what he's saying because you're bound by primary sources. If I'm a Christian or a Muslim, I'm bound by primary sources, secondary sources, and historical method. Bringing it together. Everybody's bound by the same rules, and if we follow the same rules, everything has to pan out. And he's not going with the rules by just making stuff up. And I find that as something that's very popular in the conscious community. Folks just making stuff up. Oh, we was created 76 trillion years ago and a big head scientist. We just making stuff up. A lot of this stuff is make-believe land. And history can't back it up. Us, the Nation of Islam, the church, a lot of people just say make-believe stuff because they just believe it. And that's a problem.
Okay, and so when it comes to the timelines, what are some of the primary facts, primary resources, and facts that you would say in closing that would support your position in the discrepancies that you say you found in Dr. Walter Williams' book, using facts in primary resources? When we start dealing with Second Temple Judaism, anybody just Google Second Temple Judaism, Google the Dead Sea Scrolls. When we start dealing with stuff like that, it's a problem because and look at the life of Moses and Maimonides. We have too much Torah. We have too much quoting of Torah. We have the apostolic fathers. We have too many ancient writings, the pre-Nicene fathers. We have too many ancient writings that speak about the temple, that speak about Judaism, that speak about the Torah and Genesis and Moses and Ham. It's too much stuff that came on the scene before Moses Maimonides was born. It's impossible that he could have been the one to set forth the Pentateuch to write the Torah. Well, I'd say the first 5 books we call it Pentateuch. But and that's a big problem. Like I said in the video, Carly B and them, we can't say that they invented hip hop. I can say, listen, I was dating Michelle Obama. We used to hang out at the Barclay after I dumped Beyonce. I could say all that. All of that sound good. I can say it, and there's nothing wrong with saying it. But I got to show pictures. I got to show video. I got to show and prove I dated those people, or it's just talk. And it's a lot of people talking. He's talking. And like I said, if I leave here, I want anybody just go check out, listen to Walter Williams' video, and just go read up on the donation of Constantine. Go read up on that Hadrian letter. You'll find out that that's a fraud. That's the way he explains the story of what happened with an African priest, and Constantine just came and gave him over the land to make him a priest. And that's make-believe. That's make-believe. Write down those words, the donation of Constantine. Pull it up. And when you start dealing with the Hadrian letter and all of that stuff, if we deal with Aristides of Athens, if we look at that letter he wrote on Hadrian, and he wrote
And he explained those Christians and the Christian's lifestyle. Compare that letter to the other letter of Hadrian that he's claiming he's setting forth, that everybody, atheists, Muslims, Christians, that everybody say it's fraudulent. The book is based off of fraudulent works. And like I said, far as World 16 Crucified Saviors and all of that stuff, let people come with primary sources. Everybody is saying Heru was born a virgin, crucified, and all that mess. Everybody was saying that, but a lot of people don't know all that come from Count Valley and the French and his partner Charles and them. They promoted all of that stuff, that Jesus was fake and these were astral gods. Go read the works. So a good thing that you can read is Professor Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman's not a Christian. Bart Ehrman's an atheist, and he wrote on the historical Jesus. He has a PhD from Princeton. A lot of people say, it doesn't make a difference. A degree doesn't make a difference. But if you have a degree, you understand certain methodologies and how to bring things together. A lot of people get upset, but I often quote people with degrees in the field. You can't give me nobody that got a master's or MBA, and then they start talking like they're an Egyptologist, like they're a historian. People with degrees in the field that hold positions in schools with PhDs in history, they'll all tell you basically the same thing. Jesus existed. We don't know about the walking on water stuff, but he definitely existed. And when you deal with that, it locks you in. You're basically locked in. You're sworn to follow a certain thing if you have a degree and you know how to research. You're not really going with feelings. And I don't have to go with feelings as a believer. There's other things that I can dig up and I can show and prove. And what they talk about in academia, what they talk about in seminary, what they talk about in Yale and Harvard and all of that is definitely different than what people are just hollering in the conscious community, just saying anything. Just show me the body. They're just saying ridiculous stuff. And they think that's scholarship.
Well, I can say this.
Talk.
Well, I can say this, coming from a different perspective in support of Dr. Walter Williams as well. As he explained earlier in the show, he said, he wasn't raised in Christianity. He wasn't raised in religion. They didn't do all of that stuff. Yeah. So when he came, he heard of it. He came in acknowledgement of it, but didn't practice it growing up or whatnot. So when he was exposed to an alternative to the information that was in another country that was being taught over here, basically you can't blame him if you hear that every single thing that so-called Jesus Christ was supposed to have done and experienced in his lifetime, his mission of what he came to do, that was done thousands of years before he was even born in the deity of some Egyptian god named Osiris. So how would you then, if he's then doing research, that means he's not mentally or emotionally, I want to say emotionally attached or involved into the defense, or the discreditation of Christianity, but trying to come to the bare knuckle truth of trying to find an explanation of how at two different periods, two different deities could have the same exact story. It has to be a hoax. What would be your answer to that?
Show me from a primary source. There's five. We have 5 Osirian stories. We could go with, even if we go with Plutarch. Pull up any story. Pull up any story and read the story for yourself. Don't go with what Gerald Massey say. Don't go with what Acharia S say. Don't go with what Walter Williams say. Pull up the story of Heru for yourself and see if the stories are similar. Was he the good shepherd? Was he the Lamb of God? Was he the light of the world? This is Gerald Massey, ancient Egypt light of. These is white folk from the 1800s. Go to primary sources. This is what I tell everybody. Go to the story. Go find the story. Find it in the Metunet or wherever they want to go digging. Y'all go find it in the coffin text and see if the story is the same, or see if the story began with white people in the 17 and 1800s. Gerald Massey, Kersey Graves, Count Valley, and his partner Charles, and the rest of them. See where the story come from. Then it was picked up later on and ran with Cherry S. and Graham Hancock and everybody that's on the internet now, and the movies that Geist. People in the conscious community don't like talking about primary sources. They like saying the story is the same thing. When we start dealing with Krishna, he was the 8th. He was the 8th child. They were under house arrest. The mother and the father had sex. Because the king, her uncle, wanted to kill him. Story's not the same. Where are they getting this? Krishna was born in a cave. He was born from a virgin. They were under arrest. They were on house arrest. Where is the story coming from? From the primary sources. Go to India, speak to the people. They'll tell you, no, Krishna wasn't crucified because they wasn't practicing crucifixion. It's all madness. It's all madness, but people want to believe it.
He's dealing with Isis and Osiris, and they are on the Egyptian walls.
Yes, and if you're dealing with, that's a good point. And if you're dealing with Isis and Osiris, they said the wicked brother Set had him killed, and then he was chopped up or whatever, and Isis went and brought his body back together, and she fashioned the phallus and she got on top of it. That was sex. That was magical sex. But she got on top of it and she was impregnated. That don't sound like the virgin birth. That don't sound like the same thing. Now, if people want to read into the text,
it doesn't sound like a virgin birth. No, it doesn't.
That don't sound like no virgin birth. That was magic. That was magic. It was magical sex, but it was magic. And like I said, when they start saying he was the Lamb of God, he was the Good Shepherd, all of that comes from Jeremiah. We can't find that in no primary text. He was not crucified. Then they switched the story up. Oh, he was crucified in the sun. It's astrotheology. Then they start mixing the game up because they see that people are getting up on it. It's a lot of stuff.
Well, our lines are open.
I wish the Williams back on. Huh?
Yes, I wish we could too, but sometimes people.
You didn't try to get them back.
Don't.
Yeah.
No, I didn't try to get them back. I may, we still have time left in the show. I may, have him to come back. Some people just don't want to engage in certain type of dialogue, but but we'll see. We'll see, and then if maybe we can be able to have you to come back onto the show to be able to ask questions, because this is not it wasn't a teaching platform. It was a Q&A platform, and I think that's where the confusion came, and he probably thought it was more of a lecturing, teaching, or was trying to make it out of one.
And then we want to promote the book and stuff like that. Yes. But if he do, what's important is the Egyptians went to war. Let's not romanticize ancient Kemet. Ancient Kemet, they went to war. They had to kill folk. And this is just how it is. You can't be a superpower without having an army to hold it down. This is just reality. This isn't make-believe. This isn't church.
So what primary sources that you have, because at least we were able to cover that, what primary sources you have that they went to war and they had weapons? Because he said, no, you're not going to find weapons in no museum, nowhere on the planet.
Of course you could. Of course, no. I let them talk. You can. If they look up that Battle of Megiddo, that's important right there. And the reason that that's important is on the planet. There are some historians that say on the planet that's the first recorded war that it was actually laid out and recorded on the planet, and that was the Egyptians. You shouldn't be mad to say that your people, if you believe your people were the ancient Egyptians. When you talk about civilizations, I like to go to William Leo Hansberry. He, like I said, he had a degree from Harvard, and he taught in Howard University. He spoke on the Cushites. Diodorus said before the Egyptians, the Cushites were on the scene, and some people actually believe that Osiris and them came from Ethiopia. They were Cushites, and they started set up the Egyptian civilization. But that Narmer palette is important because it shows the king is grabbing somebody by the head, ready to take his head off. He's holding their hair, and many people interpret that as the first recorded war when he joined Upper and Lower Egypt. Now, there's some Egyptologists that say it's just symbolic, but basically most people feel that showed there was some type of war, some type of forced persuasion to join Upper and Lower Egypt and show dominance. So that's one thing right there. I closed the tablet back up, but that's one thing right there. And like I said, that Battle of Megiddo. Definitely pull that up. And if you just Google Egyptian war, Egyptian military, they had the wars. They even had a navy, and they were named after the different gods of Egypt. So like we have the Navy and the Marines and all that. They had the same setup, and that's everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. So for him to try to say that there were no armies. Now, as far as penitentiary and prisons, I can't say for sure that they had a prison system like that where they would put you in jail or there was some type of thing when people did wrong. I can't say that I'm versed in that right there, but they definitely had an army, and they definitely went to war plenty of times.
And I'm a little bit confused about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about that because even the Israelites.
Go ahead.
The Israelites, when they came and grew up as a nation and were slaves in Egypt, building up Egypt, supposedly, those records are from, of course, the Bible. But even David was thrown into prison before he rose up. Yeah. So they had prisons. As far as the Bible records.
All cultures had some type of. You have to have punishment because people are people. And all people are going to do wrong. So different countries have different types of punishment. I know when you come over here to the States, like if you go to Auburn, upstate New York, and I forget one of the oldest prisons in Philadelphia here, they set it up. It was based on, some of them Puritans and some of them Christians, and it was basically for people to get away, and they would lock you away and, give you time just to meditate. That's where we would get like solitary confinement from and this and that. But different cultures had different type of things. I know they say that even the debtor prison that's in Dubai, they say that's ancient. It goes back thousands of years. But to say that they had something like Sing Sing or Attica, Folsom, something like that in Egypt, I'm not sure. But definitely. One more thing before I got out of here. He said it's just so strange. I never heard, and I've been doing this for a while, and I have to respect how long he's been studying. But if you go back and you look at all of Walter Williams' all of his videos and stuff, he's never really given any primary sources. He said something very interesting. He gave me the impression in those videos that the Greeks, only the Egyptians had a language. The Greeks had a language, but they didn't have a written alphabet. And I don't know, once again, I don't know anybody. If y'all Google Homer's Iliad, Odyssey, if y'all Google that stuff was in existence before Alexander walked into Egypt. They already had that book. They already had those poems. They already had those writings in existence. So to try to make it sound like they weren't civilized at all, they couldn't even read. Philip in Macedonia, they had something set up. He had a kingdom. A lot of people, they don't want to call Alexander the Great and all of this stuff like that. But he did some big stuff. He unified a large portion of lands, and he made one language to unify the people. And we have to look at that. He's trying to act like the Greeks came and the Greeks they weren't civilized until they got there. And that's not true. I can't find that anywhere. And I'd like to find a professor. I'm not sure what Walter Williams, they call him Professor Dr. Williams. I'm not sure what degree he has, because I notice in the conscious community and stuff, people just start giving themselves grand titles, or do you have an earned doctorate degree? Is it an honorary doctorate degree? We call him Dr. Ben, but if you go to Sinetta, if Sinetta got Dr. Ben's funeral, his obituary is online. You pull it up, he had honorary degrees. His family said that. And we have to understand certain things when somebody's trained, when somebody go to school, when somebody has a degree, or if it's an honorary degree or somebody's just given their title. I'm not sure what his degree is in, if he do have a degree. Is it in classics? Is it in the ancient Greek civilization? Because there's many people that will go against what he's saying. They specialize in the Greek civilization. They specialize in the Mediterranean period. We have to start dealing with people that specialize in that realm. The guy that changed the flat tire on the car, I don't want him doing heart surgery on me. I just don't want it. I want a specialist that do it. And this is what we need to start doing in the conscious community. Anybody that say anything, I can open up by saying, listen, y'all, the white man is the devil. I'm not dealing with them blue-eyed devils. And then if I say that, people are opened up. I can start telling you we starve people. We come from another planet, Malachi, New York. I can walk through walls. We start saying crazy stuff. He's in jail right now. Let him walk through walls and get out of there. We've been waiting for 20 years, but they tell us a lot of things. So we got to be careful in every area. A lot of people are so quick to bang on the church and this and that. But I often tell people in my videos, check the scoreboard. The black church, we put plenty work in. We put plenty work in. And until a lot of those other groups and organizations got a better thing, they can't really knock the church. Like they can't really do it. And we all in the learning process.
They say, with all things, like this old saying says, with all things get understanding. So you're listening right now to Rahchamah's Conscious Couch with we had Dr. Walter Williams on the line right now. You were listening to Bareen on Bareen TV. He holds classes called Sunday seminaries. And if the lines are open, you just dial press 1 on your set if you want to call in, and if you have any questions or have any comments for our guest today. In the meantime, where is it so that people can be able to listen to your videos in order to hear your perspective of the things that you were speaking on today in reference to Madness of Walter Williams?
Oh, well, I'm on Berean TV on YouTube. I'm on Berean TV, Brother Berean on Facebook. Y'all can get in touch with me at BereanTeach@gmail.com. We have live classes. You know, we deal with the pineal gland. Right now we're dealing with Hinduism, the chakra system, third eye, and the Holy Ghost. That's the class I'm supposed to be teaching right now. But we also, you know, give an introduction on who's who in the conscious community. A lot of people don't have a clear understanding of who's who, so we often go through the various groups: Noble Jew Ali, the Moore Science Temple, Clarence 13X, and the 5 Percenters, and we give a perspective just to wake Christians up, to let them know that there's a lot out there that they need to know. People are woke, people are searching, people have different doctrines, so we teach those various things. We have at 8 o'clock, we have in the Basic Apologetics 101. We get into some heavy stuff. A lot of people say, well, you know, Christians, they don't want to study, they don't want to read any other books. I'm making them get into the lessons. I'm making them get into the Egyptian book of the coming forth by day, and, you know, exposing them to Dr. Ben and who Sinetta is. You know, Sinetta is a big force in this whole movement, and, you know, we have to shout them out. Other people that are out here, and, you know, they're trying to lift the people up. They're teaching certain things. So I just want to expose a lot of believers to that. And, you know, there's a lot of Christians, I can't lie, they all sleep. In the black church, we jump up and down, we hollering, you know, and we just throw the little money on the plate, dance, and roll on the floor. And we get up and we don't know our history, but it's a new day, it's a new hour. So I'm coming forth, you know, myself, my man, a couple of us that's out here woke. It's a movement that's going on. We have a video series with Thrive Frequency, Dr. Eric Mason. You know, I get on, I lecture with him, Pastor Jerome Gay, Damon Richardson. There's a lot of people. I'm throwing those names out there because there's a lot of people. They're really into the books. They're really into studying, and that's important. And like I said, people are just wanting to know. And there's nothing wrong with, and, you know, it's good to let people know there's nothing wrong with not wanting to accept no white Jesus. You know, in the midst of all of this, I got to shout out the conscious community, because the whole Afrocentric movement came about because white folk were lying. I got to keep it 100. White folk lying. Everybody is white. God is white. Angels is white. Moses is white. The Egyptians are white. The Babylonians are white. Everybody is white. And Dr. Ben and different people, John Henry Clark and what's the brother named James that wrote Stolen Legacy, a lot of them came out and they started to bang against that. You know, these people, they want to tell us we come from monkeys and all of this other stuff, and it's kind of problematic because we're at the bottom and we're closer to monkeys and the blue-eyed blonde hair. These are the most evolved people, and it was racism. So the conscious community basically came on the scene, Pan-Africanism and all of that stuff, to say, man, listen, these folk can't do what they want to do. You know, we went to the other end of the spectrum, but it's the same thing that they were doing, and that was attempting to give an answer. So a lot of people would hear me, and sometimes it seems like I'm always banging on the conscious community, but it's a good thing because people wanted to wake up and people knew that, listen, we got a history. These people trying to just start our history with slavery, and they got to be hiding something. You know, they're doing it for a specific reason, so we're attempting to answer that, but at the same time have our faith, have our belief system. A lot of people want to act like if we go back to ancient Kemet and ancient Kemetic spirituality, that wasn't all over the planet. We can't say that was all over the continent of Africa. So can we get along? Can we be brothers and sisters and have different faith and different beliefs? It's no problem. You know, but at the same time, don't bang down what I believe or just try to switch the game up and act like it was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus. That iconography, that picture, that stuff came way later on. And that was to wake Europeans up during the Renaissance period, and that was for them. I don't want the white Jesus, and a lot of people start giving us pictures and showing us things, and a lot of people even talking about it right now. When was the last time, I often ask people, when was the last time you walked in any prosperous black church and you see a white Jesus? People just riding off of that story. We've been past that. We're not dealing with that. But at the same time, we're waking people up and teaching them certain things, and I think that's important for a believer to know.
Well,
just not engage your brothers and sisters. Huh?
Well, most definitely sounds like with the subject topics that you teach, that you say that you teach on, it with the pineal gland and a lot of the different things that you're saying that you teach on in the consciousness community, it sounds most definitely like you're doing your part. Well, right now you're listening to Rahchamah's Conscious Couch, where we eat the meat and pick out the bones, and we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you have a question for our guests on the show, you can tune in and raise your hand at any moment. If not, we're going to get ready to go to our commercial break in a few minutes, and when we return, we're going to speak with the author of the book, True Master Self to Self, Asar, when we return after this moment.
Oh, they in that class waiting.
What does Tahaka Secure Party and Creditor package entails? Private consultation by phone and email, the correct system for paying your property taxes in the private, the documents you will need to conduct business and transactions, public and private, Tahaka Library, documents for status change in commerce, master study manuals, and trust guides, free credit repair with all 3 credit bureaus, a business for you in itself. Educational materials on DVD and CD sent directly to your postal box. 1099's education and how to file. How to become a private banker the right way. Asset building, protection, and investing. We also, for all of our clients, host our private conference calls. To access this kind of education and power, go to www.newdataelimination.com or call me directly, 904-303-9061. Also keep in mind, we have the top best financial advisors there is. Peace.
Welcome back to Rahchamah's Conscious Couch. We are here with author of the book True Master Self to Self, Asar. Are you with us?
Yes, Rahchamah, I'm here.
Okay, awesome,
Hello?
awesome. Okay, glad that you were awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. It's a pleasure to have you on the line with us today and to tune in on your book that you wrote that we're very interested in, because as I was reading and skimming through it, I think it is very important because it deals with the psychological metaphysics side of us. It's, and we need that in today's society with dealing with mental illness, as far as how we feel about ourselves, how we communicate with ourselves and with others. And if you could just expound a little bit about the book True Master, what made you come up with the title True Master and decide that you wanted to release this to the people and just tell the people in short what True Master is about, self to self?
Okay. Realistically, like I say in the preface of the book, the reason why I wrote the book was because kind of what we just witnessed on the phone. A lot of times we have, and no disrespect to the brothers who just spoke before me and what have you, a lot of times we have a situation where we're arguing over doctrines and everything like that. Whose God is better, whose this is better, and everything like that. We, as black people, we really don't have the luxury about arguing about anything. They're killing us wholesale in the streets. And really, this book kind of draws a line in the sand between the conscious so-called community and the awareness so-called community. I mean, that's just a term that's been kind of coined for this. See, this book right here, it's not anything that we can argue about or debate about. You see what I'm saying? I'm using universal principles, and what I'm doing, I'm showing people how these universal principles can be filtered through a craft where you can arrive at some sort of key where you can understand the subconscious language and everything like that. So a lot of the problems that face us on our day-to-day life, you know what I mean, we can solve. We can have what I refer to in the book as proper responses to energy. It teaches us how to attain our goals. And everybody in the conscious community, or a significant enough number of people in the conscious community, always say, "Oh, I'm God, I'm this, I'm that," or whatever. What does that entail? You see what I mean? What is the self in totality? Is your body the self, or does your self extend outside of the body and everything like that? So we can argue about Jesus and we can argue about Muhammad, but we can't argue about the fact that we all have a mind. We can't argue about the fact that the mind has various different levels to it, and the various different levels communicate differently. You see what I mean? So true mastery is about becoming your own master. You see what I mean? It's tools to become your own master. It's not a magic pill you can take. It's just going to make you Superman overnight. But it's about raising an awareness of the communication that you have with yourself, inclusive of the relationships that you have with other people. Self to others, which is the next volume of the book, it talks about concepts like collective consciousness. Collective consciousness suggests a group. A group suggests individual members with some sort of relationship between each other. And at this point, we have broken families. We have all kind of different situations where we can't get along as far as our community. You see what I'm saying? Tension cannot be maintained, but relaxation can be maintained indefinitely. Relationships that have a lot of tension in them, they collapse. Unbalanced relationships collapse, but balanced relationships, they last indefinitely. So this is more of a self-analysis as far as the book Self to Self, but the whole series, True Master, you have self to self, self to others, and others to self. It goes into an evaluation, and it gives you practical tools to be able to use. And I know, the brother mentioned Dr. York a little bit earlier. That's my background. I'm a Nawabian. You know what I mean? That's the background that I originally come from. So much respect. Shout out to UNNM, those brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? So that's if you look at some of the stuff like C. Freeman L's stuff, he talks about how symbolism is the unification of the faiths. All religions use a certain variety of symbolism to convey certain messages, and the subconscious mind speaks in symbols and it speaks in repetition. You see what I mean? So I have videos on YouTube. I talk about divination as decryption. I talk about like the back and forth communication with the subconscious mind. You see what I mean? And once we can actually read this, we won't encounter a lot of the problems that we actually have. Now, this is not some fairy tale made up stuff. Divination is real. Astrology is real. You can pull your natal chart right now. That's real. So it's some sort of innate communication that's available to us, but we use these crutches, these aids, these tools to be able to access that level of communication. And what I'm saying is it's not so much emphasis on some sort of God outside of yourself. It's about aligning with your higher self, so-called, in this New Age thing, but it's aligning with God from within you. It's establishing that you are God. On some level, we're one mind. We're all one. You're the only one here. You as in the absolute. You see what I mean? And consciousness is filtered down into you and me. You see what I'm saying? So it's about going back into, everybody talks about, Taharka did this in the 25th dynasty and all that stuff like that. And I'm not calling that frivolous information because of the fact that knowledge is an investment in yourself. Knowledge, I wouldn't be to this point right now was it not for knowledge. But some of what Taharka did in the 25th dynasty isn't doing anything for me today. You see what I mean? The brothers on the corner who's starving ain't doing nothing for them. The brothers, you know what I mean, who shooting each other, and the young ones without guidance, you know what I mean? What Taharka did in the 25th dynasty ain't really doing much for them. So that's why we put things like this out. So,
So basically what you're saying is that your book, True Master, Self to Self, is helping you concentrate and reflect on the master of self, which is the true you and helping you to discover who you are through your subconsciousness, or tapping into the subconsciousness of part of you that you haven't been paying attention to, that is also known as the third eye, correct?
Something like that. It's a practical guide. Let's say I'll give you an example. In Volume 2, I talk about how to attain your goals, right? So we have something in the book. These concepts mentioned in the book, right? I'm piggybacking off of another system called the experiential system. It goes into talking about something called symbols, patterns, and principles. You see what I mean? I also talk about, I'll give you an example. In attaining a goal, I talk about the concept of a structure. You see what I mean? A structure is something that we use to control the energy. If I want to sit down, I build a chair so I can sit down. If I don't want to get rained on, or if it's too hot outside, I build a house to control the fluctuations in my circumstance. I build some sort of a structure. Now, let's say like you have a car. A structure is comprised of various different balance points, theoretically. And in a car, you would have, let's say, like your brakes. If your brakes start squeaking or whatever, you can make it a little bit without that. You know what I mean? But a stability point, so-called, would be like the engine of the car and everything like that. You see what I mean? If your engine goes out, then your car goes out. So these are you filter situations and things through this perspective or whatever, and you can break down complex things in a more simplistic way. You can evaluate existing things. Let's say like you have a business. Balance points in your business would be like your employees, your equipment, things like that. So you can adjust the productivity of your employees. You can adjust the quality of your equipment, the equipment that you may need, and everything like that. Balance a structure, travel down a linear path to a goal. Let's say like if you're trying to get a college degree, the degree would be a stability point. The courses that you take to get the degree would be like balance points in that goal. So this is more of a practical guide that people can use. It's a key that you can filter your everyday occurrences through, because in the book it talks about how the subconscious mind speaks through repetition, and it speaks through what we call the language of events. You see what I mean? So there are no such thing as isolated events. There are no such thing as random occurrences and coincidences and stuff like that. All of that is actually readable. You see what I'm saying? And when you have a key to actually filter it through, it comes out on the other side as something that you can interpret and you can make better decisions based off of.
Okay, awesome. So basically your book, like you were saying, someone from way back in the day that made their accomplishments their era is not helping you today in this dynasty or in this period of time and dispensation that we're in, because the elements of what we're dealing with in its physicalities are different. And your book helps the individual put themselves in a position to be self-reliant, self-sustaining, and self-evaluating, to give them the tools and the answers that they need to rectify whatever issues that they're going on, to deal with them issues that's going on within themselves and society around them, to make a conscientious difference for themselves.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. We can examine, history and stuff like that, and we can filter it through this system, and we can see what went wrong energetically in this situation or that situation. And again, I'm not talking down as far as our scholars and stuff like that, because they got us this far or whatever. But there has to be an advancement, because I see a ceiling forming where we're just debating with each other about doctrines. I mean, we've been debating. I know you referencing Dr. York earlier. Dr. York has been talking about Christianity since 1960 and 1970. We've been debating Muslims as Nawabians for the longest. You see what I mean? It's been a book written about every doctrine that you can think of. So if I was to speak, this book, realistically, it's not designed for a person who's new to so-called consciousness. This book is designed for people who have hit the wall in consciousness. people who have heard every breakdown of metaphysical mumbo-jumbo, people who have heard every variation of the Gnostic, Apocrypha, and all this stuff like that, and they still going through the same problems. They're still broke. They're still looking for a job. They're still catching a bus. You see what I mean? So if the ancestors lived in this utopian society that we always talk about, you see what I'm saying? The fact that they lived in this utopian society, that's cool, but what was their thought process that got them there? So that's kind of like what we express in this book, functional stuff. It's the difference between consciousness, which is just knowledge, and awareness, which is functional stuff that you can actually use today.
Okay, I see. And you just give the audience an example of a tool that you give in your book that they can use self to self, that can be able to position them into getting them out of the cycle of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. What is one tool that you can give us as a spoiler out of your book, in the book Self to Self True Master, that could get them engaged?
Okay, well, this is some material, right? Okay, this is something that I call energetic Band-Aids, right? Okay, and this is you should kind of get a feel for the language of the book. I call it energetic Band-Aids. So we're dealing with what we call, true principles. True principles are things that are abstract and have an infinite amount of substance. Love, unity, family, etc. We only observe expressions of them, but the actual concept has no physical or conceptual representation alone. Some principles initiate a path that can last many lifetimes. True principles don't repeat. They just exist. They are expressed through repetition. You see what I'm saying? Like the principle of solidity or something like that. Everything around you is solid. Everything around you has some form of agreement, some form of harmony to it. That's a principle being expressed through physical phenomena, right? Okay, it's something else I call symbolic principles or deified symbols. Okay, these are finite things with a certain value to a person that are elevated to a high level, a goal to be attained. An example of that would be a promotion on your job, a significant other, an outfit, a pair of designer shoes, etc. Due to the fact that they are finite, they have a finite amount of substance. Once you attain them, you are left empty. Behind every deified symbol is a true symbol in disguise. So if you wanted that new pair of shoes or whatever, when you get them or whatever, and you just throw them in the closet or whatever, because it's not really that pair of shoes that you really wanted. It's some other principle within your psyche that you're probably unbalanced with, that you're trying to satisfy. So what that brings us to the concept of energetic Band-Aids. Something that addresses the symptoms of a problem, but not its source. An energetic Band-Aid can temporarily pacify existing holes in the structure or stop one hole and initiate a new one. Deified symbols sometimes act as energetic Band-Aids. So basically, I'm really breaking down principles. So basically, that's a common occurrence where somebody chases after something that has very little substance, maybe a physical object or something like that. Once they attain it, it loses its substance or whatever. But if somebody is on a path of enlightenment or a path of, community service or some lasting principle or whatever, that principle might endure for their whole lifetime and everything like that. So these are some of the concepts that it's actually breaking down. So when we talk about the laws of the laws of Ma'at and stuff like that or whatever, we hear these things as information, but what does it really mean and how do these things really apply? You see what I mean?
Right, the application is an important process. So even with those principles and realizing somebody is never satisfied, or they they identify, okay, I have this cycle, I'm not fulfilled, but then the question is, then what? It's like you just having a craving for something. You know what it is that you may crave for, but you don't know how to go about to obtain it. What if those are the principles of just acknowledging that there is an issue, then what is the principle for moving towards making that change, for understanding what's going on with you and actually moving towards it?
Okay, see, that goes into other concepts that I talk about in the book. Excuse me. It's another concept that I talk about called stacking awareness. You see what I mean? Stacking awareness is operating your life from the perspective that there are multiple different levels of the mind and they communicate differently. So you operate your strategies with all of those different levels of the mind in mind. So if you're looking for a new job, what physical habits, what physical actions would facilitate getting a new job? What do you visualize about the person that you want to be having the job? What it feels like to actually have the job? You see what I'm saying? What elements of your subconscious landscape, like your clothes and, you know what I'm saying, how you carry yourself, that will facilitate you getting another job. And that also ties into what I call singing your song. Singing your song is projecting your frequency out into the world. Your thoughts and your attention is the stimulus for your reality. So you're always creating, whether you're thinking about it consciously or not. So stacking awareness and what I call certain concepts like energetic relaxation is kind of like putting yourself on autopilot, where it's just a habit to be successful. It's just a habit to do certain things correctly. You see what I mean? So you're operating with more of your mind in mind. In the book, I talk about how the conscious mind is the lowest at the lowest level of awareness of all the levels of the mind. So it needs help to even understand there is a subconscious language. You see what I mean? So it's kind of a setup. Right. But as far as the projecting your frequency or what have you, that's the singing your song. You're basically establishing a position. You're saying, okay, well, I'm going to be a successful entrepreneur, and you start you plant your flag in the sand and you start building elements around that. You see what I mean? To facilitate what you're actually trying to do. You see what I mean? And that kind of, yeah.
So once someone reads your book, no matter where their state of mind, if they're operating in the conscious state or they're somewhere in between this conscious and the subconscious, their subconscious state of mind, after reading your book, they're able to walk away with principles that they can apply to be able to make differences in their lives. After reading your book, it'll give them like a blow-by-blow play. And they should. It's more of a. Would you say it's more of a application more than information? Your book.
Yeah, it's less about the information because my thought process for it, self to self, is the foundational information. You see what I'm saying? A lot of this stuff, self to others, is the actual system itself. It actually talks about actually pursuing your goals and stuff like that, and how to win, as I call it. You see what I mean? Or the spirit of victory and all that stuff and all that. That's what self to others talks about. Self to self, it kind of addresses what is the self. You see what I'm saying? Because a lot of people talk about, okay, well, you know what I'm saying, I'm God and I can do what I want to do, and you know what I mean? And they're, actually disrespectful toward other people and things or what have you. As we know, as far as like when we go into certain concepts, let's say like the Egyptian connotation of things, the name is a aspect of you. It's a non-physical aspect of you. You see what I mean? Your name is important. That's an aspect of your spirituality. Your name is linked to your reputation. Your reputation is linked to your relationships with people. So your name lives on after you die, after the physical constitution dies. So even after when you cease to be a physical person, you're still a thought form in people's minds and stuff like that. So when we say we're God or whatever, and we look at our ancestors and we look at, such and such did this in this dynasty or whatever case may be, they wrote, they put monuments in stone and everything like that, so their names would live on forever. You know what I mean? It's about accessing their thought process. When they wanted to curse somebody, they would carve their name off of the monument so that nobody would remember their name. You see what I mean? It's certain concepts like that or whatever. And talking about what such and such did in the third dynasty, that doesn't tell you why they thought like they thought. And just kind of to speak on that a little bit, we talk about Egyptian chronology and stuff like that. when we talk about Egypt, in the first dynasty, they had all their alphabet, they had all their language and everything like that. The first dynasty is a replica of an older civilization because time is cyclical from their understanding. Time is not linear and everything like that. So when you get to the first dynasty and all that, after the old kingdom, that's a decline in their civilization. You see what I'm saying? The Nubians predated the Egyptians and stuff like that. And as it pertains to geomancy, and you start talking about like primary sources and stuff like that, it's certain things there are no primary sources for. Certain things are encapsulated in cultural references, like tribal dances and stuff like that. Those are like sign language and stuff. You see what I mean? That's like a sign language where it tells a story and stuff like that. So some stuff there is no written records for. There's stories and there are associations with certain things that you have to draw. You can't because time works in cycles. Empires rise and decline. Things get burnt down or whatever case may be. So some information is encapsulated within cultural references and stuff like that. Like I told you, encapsulating a story in a dance. That's like how we talked about. We build structures to control the energy. A pattern of movements or a sequence of movements would be like a structure. You see what I mean? So it's the same concepts playing over and over again. So that's why it's so important to understand some of this stuff conceptually. So when we look at things, we have a better understanding. You see what I mean?
Right, and
because
and I always say that things are layered, just like you say. Just like you said, things are layered. Some people see things literally, and some people see things figuratively or metaphorically. But all in all, we have to be able to see the full picture. Like you said, we have to know time and dispensation during that period of time, what was going on around those different circumstances in order for them to have that thought process to act the way they act or do the things they do, or do rather. And then moving forward, when we're trying to apply it to today's life, seeing the relevancy of where it fits into our time frame and how it's going to make us move forward in our subjective goals as a community, as a conscious community at that, so that we can be able to overcome the plight that we deal with, which are all our common social ills. Like you were saying, we're going to get ready to go into overtime in our show, so everyone just still, hold on. And remember, the line is open on Rahchamah's Conscious Couch for questions. If you want to speak to the host, if you want to make a statement, you just press number 1 on your dial pad, raise your hand, and we'll tune you in. Right now, for those who are just tuning in, we're speaking with the author of the book, True Master, Self to Self, which is Volume 1. And our guest is Asar, and he's speaking about this awesome book that he wrote that teaches you how to deal with self. You deal between your consciousness and your subconsciousness, and analyzing what's going on with you, and how you're trying to figure out what's going on around you. And then he has 2 other volumes. You said it was Self to Others, right? Is volume 2?
Self to Others. Yeah, Volume 2 is self. When I originally wrote it, it was True Master was one whole book, but I broke it up and it was 3 chapters: self to self, self to others, and others to self. But how it really ended up, I put it out as 3 books. So the first book is Self to Self. It talks about the foundational relationship with yourself and the foundational understanding of energy. Then you have Self to Others. That's more of how to attain your goals. It's about relationships with others, collective consciousness, offense as far as attaining your goals. And then you have Others to Self, which is more on the defensive, psychic self-defense type level. You see what I mean?
Okay, exactly. And basically your position, because we came into the show, and I'm sure you've heard the show throughout, where we had special guests on the show, Walter Williams, and we also had Brother Bareen from Bareen TV that was, we had a different perspective from Mr. Williams' theology and on the books that he wrote. And then you kind of segue in on the whole thing, because you take a perspective of all of those things that we encounter or we study as a conscious community in the past. My question to you is, how would you see not only just yourself, because your book is the reflection of yourself, but how would you take the book that you wrote and the conversation that we just had earlier before, speaking about the past and history and taking into consideration some of the things or the obstacles as a community, as a nation of people today that we have to overcome. How can your book bridge that gap?
My book, it benefits that situation from a practical perspective. Like I said, I'm not downing the brothers who spoke earlier. I mean, I have the utmost respect for, our scholars, Dr. York, Dr. Ben, Renoko Rashidi, countless others, because they paved the way. Those were some of the first books that I read in the whole conscious paradigm and everything like that. So they're very necessary and everything. But my book is not necessarily designed for people who just found out that, they're not really down with Christianity or whatever case may be. My book is for somebody, that's on that next level who says, I'm God, but don't know what that means. You see what I'm saying? So this is designed to create a more functional body of people. I'm not looking to be a guru to my people or nothing like that. The book is designed to give you tools that creates masters. It's my intention that somebody will take this same information or similar information and run to the next level with it. You see what I mean? They might create some other type of understanding out of it or what have you. It's designed for progression. I always say we always have to stay at the head of the comet. You see what I mean? The head of the comet is where the fire is. You see what I mean? Those are the cutting edge ideas and everything like that. The tail of the comet is antiquated information. And we've been arguing about Jesus since 1960 and 70. In the 1800s, a guy wrote a book about who is this King of Glory. You see what I mean? They've been writing about that Jesus wasn't a real person for a long time. I think the arguments of Celsus, you know what I mean, back in, I think, 2 AD or something like that, they were arguing about, was Jesus a real person and stuff like that. So it's a lot of material out there, and I'm not really interested in debating about whether Jesus was a real person because Jesus hadn't. I have a better connection with my grandmother than I have with Jesus because I know what her laugh sounds like. I know what, what her cooking smells like. I know what, what it looks like when she's mad. I know what it looks like when she's happy. I have a better connection with her than I have with Jesus, so I'm not really interested whether Jesus existed or not. You see what I mean? But but functional principles that can move our people forward, functional principles that you can pass on to your children so they can start a business, so they can have a functional family or whatever the case may be. That's the type of stuff that I'm kind of looking at because I've heard it all before. You see what I mean?
Okay. And when you were speaking about on your book, you were saying that it's a unique book to read because it uses is used for anyone regardless of their spiritual background. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah. Real.
Okay. Awesome.
These are universal principles.
Before we get ready to.
Now, yeah.
Before we're running out of time, and we most definitely are going to invite you back up on the show.
Okay.
Before we get ready to go, just give the audience to know where they could purchase and read True Master Self to Self, where it's available.
True Master is available on Amazon.com. You can order it. It's also available on Kindle. That's the primary place where you can get it from now. I have a YouTube page, True Master Book. Let me see. I also have a Facebook page, True Master Book. It's up under Tahoe Tep 99. So I mean, if you all, I'll be posting videos. I do like a new video every day, so you all can follow along. And I appreciate the support.
You're welcome. Thank you for being a guest on today's show, and everyone, thank you for listening to Rahchamah's Conscious Couch. You can come back and see us every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live on this broadcast. And always remember, if you need your general post or you need your business addresses, go to businessfront.space and click on the website, and you can go there. And for any radio promotions as far as you being an entertainer, go to Yah Heard Radio, YAH, YahHeardRadio.com. But in the meantime, get off of my couch.